Atlantic City, the playground of the world, a place where fortunes were made, laws were broken, and power was bought with bootleg whiskey. HBO's Boardwalk Empire painted a vivid picture of corruption, vice, and political power during Prohibition. But behind the fictionalized drama lies an even more fascinating true story, one of real gangsters, crooked politicians, and the birth of organized crime in America. Boardwalk Empire wasn't just a gangster drama, it was a window into America's past. A time when the boardwalk glittered with lights, when Prohibition turned ordinary men into millionaires, and when one man ruled Atlantic City with charm, corruption, and power. His name was Enoch Lewis Nucky Johnson, the real-life inspiration for Nucky Thompson. Health Wealth Diary presents the real story behind Boardwalk Empire, the life of Nucky Johnson, the gangsters who surrounded him, and how HBO blended fact with fiction to create one of television's greatest crime sagas. Atlantic City was born in the late 1800s as a seaside resort. Developers built massive hotels, wide beaches, and the famous boardwalk to draw in visitors. It became known as the world's playground, a place where the rich could escape their cities and indulge themselves. But beneath the glamour was something else: corruption. Local politicians and businessmen realized that vice meant money. Gambling, prostitution, and illegal drinking were tolerated as long as the right people got paid. Nucky Johnson was born on January 20th, 1883 in the small town of Galloway Township, New Jersey. His father, Smith Johnson, was the sheriff of Atlantic County, strict, respected, and a man of the law. His mother, Virginia, came from modest means. Nucky had a younger brother, Alfred, who would later serve as Atlantic County Sheriff himself. Nucky's family wasn't wealthy, but they were well connected. Politics was in his blood. He learned early how favors and power worked. Unlike the fictionalized Nucky Thompson, the real Nucky's roots were rural and humble. This upbringing gave Nucky two qualities that defined his life: ambition and adaptability. He could speak the language of farmers and fishermen, but also charm senators and gangsters. Ambitious and intelligent, Nucky quickly followed his father into law enforcement. By 20, he was an undersheriff. By 25, he was elected sheriff of Atlantic County. But Nucky soon realized that real power wasn't about holding titles, it was about controlling the money. He attached himself to Louis the Commodore Quenley, the Republican boss of Atlantic City. When Quenley was convicted of corruption, Nucky stepped in and took control. As county treasurer, he handled huge sums of public funds, and from that position, he built an empire. By the 1910s, nothing in Atlantic City happened without Nucky's approval. Every job, every contract, every election was run through him. He became the undisputed boss of the city. And when Prohibition arrived in 1920, banning alcohol nationwide, Nucky seized the opportunity of a lifetime. While the rest of America went dry, Atlantic City stayed wet. Visitors poured in to drink, gamble, and party. Bootleggers smuggled liquor by boat and truck. Speakeasies operated openly on the boardwalk. Brothels and casinos flourished, and Nucky collected his cut from all of it. Unlike his television counterpart, Nucky Johnson didn't personally run speakeasies or order murders. He positioned himself as the protector, the man who made sure everything ran smoothly. Criminals paid him to operate. Politicians depended on him for votes. He was the middleman between crime and politics. Nucky lived like a king. He kept a luxurious suite at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. He wore diamond jewelry, silk suits, and was never seen without a red carnation in his lapel. He traveled by chauffeur-driven Cadillac, and his parties became legendary. His generosity was also well known. Every Christmas he gave out turkeys and coal to poor families. To the public, he was half Robin Hood, half monarch. But behind the glamour was a man marked by personal tragedy. Nucky married his childhood sweetheart, Mabel Jeffries, in 1906. They had a daughter together, but the child died young. The loss devastated Mabel, and she died in 1912, leaving Nucky a widower in his 20s. The heartbreak drove him deeper into politics and power, but it also shaped his private life. From then on, Nucky surrounded himself with women. He was known for his affairs with showgirls and dancers, and his Ritz-Carlton suite was as much a stage for romance as it was for politics. Later in life, after his fall from power, he remarried. His second wife, Florence Osbeck, had once been a showgirl herself. She was decades younger, but she stayed with him until his death in 1968. Nucky's power reached its peak during the Roaring Twenties. He hosted not only tourists and politicians, but gangsters. Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, and Meyer Lansky, they all came to Atlantic City. In 1929, the city even hosted a historic mob conference. Bosses from across America met to reduce violence and organize the underworld like a business. Nucky wasn't a mobster like them. He was their host, the man who provided neutral ground. In truth, he was their landlord, not their partner. Boardwalk Empire blurred the line between fact and fiction. Some characters were lifted almost directly from history, while others were entirely invented for dramatic effect. Let's break down who was real, who was fictional, and who was somewhere in between. The central figure of the show, Nucky Johnson, played by the brilliant Steve Buscemi, is based on the real Nucky Johnson. But there are major differences. In the show, Nucky is depicted as a gangster who orders murders, personally handles bootlegging deals, and engages in violent power struggles. In reality, Nucky Johnson was far more of a political boss than a gangster. He rarely got his hands dirty. He controlled Atlantic City through politics, payoffs, and influence, not gunfights. Nucky would never have risen to power without the help of others. Before the Commodore Louis Quinlan was convicted on corruption charges, he established the system of kickbacks that made him and then Nucky rich. After his fall from grace, Johnson was able to take the reins of power. The show has Dabney Coleman playing the Commodore, who is also Jimmy Dormity's father. This father-son storyline may be pretty cool, but unfortunately, it's not true. And although the Commodore did challenge Nucky's leadership, in actuality, the two eventually reconciled, and Johnson backed Quinlan's successful campaign for city commissioner in 1920, a post he held until his death. Sheriff Elias Eli Thompson plays Nucky's brother and henchman on the show. His character is based on Alfred Johnson, Nucky Johnson's actual brother. Alfie Nucky and their father, Smith Johnson, all rotated in and out of the office of county sheriff. And while this is depicted in the show, the timeline is off, as Alfie didn't make it into office until after 1920. Jimmy Dormity, who was played by Michael Pitt, is Nucky's protege, a Princeton dropout and World War I veteran with brains and a vicious bite. His character is loosely based on Jimmy Boyd, who was Nucky's assistant when he was head of the 4th Ward and county clerk. The show has Jimmy robbing bootleggers, which he did not do. He also was not involved in any way with Al Capone, but he was responsible for delivering bad news and helping maintain order in his ward. Agent Nelson Van Alden, who was played by the creepy yet awesome Michael Shannon, is the overzealous FBI agent, trying to purify Atlantic City and rid the country of liquor by any means necessary. The puritanical Prohibition agent turned criminal is mostly fictional, but his character is partly based on William Frank, who oversaw a joint IRS and FBI task force to bring Nucky to justice. The only problem is that his operation began in 1936, which is well after the show's setting. Margaret Schroeder, who was played by Kelly MacDonald, starts off as one of Nucky's loyal followers, but after she is beaten by her abusive alcoholic husband, who ends up getting killed by Nucky's brother, she becomes his mistress. Her character is loosely based on Mary Ill, who is also involved with local women's groups and charities. Her extensive interviews were used as research for the show and helped to create Nucky's character as well. However, there is no evidence that she and Nucky became romantically involved or that he arranged for the brutal murder of her husband, although at least one source claims he did have the man banned from local gambling halls, as is depicted in the show. Chalky White, leader of Atlantic City's black community, is loosely inspired by real African-American figures of the time. During Prohibition, black entrepreneurs ran clubs, bars, and speakeasies, often working under the protection of political bosses like Nucky Johnson. However, Chalky himself never existed. His character was an invention that gave the show a way to explore race, business, and power in 1920s Atlantic City. Richard Harrow, the haunting sharpshooter with a tin half mask, became one of the most beloved characters in the show, but Richard Harrow is also fictional. Played by actor Jack Houston, Harrow symbolizes the disfigured veterans of World War I who struggled to fit back into society. His quiet dignity and violence gave him a mythic presence, but there's no real-life counterpart. Arnold Rothstein was real, a powerful New York mobster who fixed the 1919 World Series. In the show, he's portrayed as calm, calculating, and businesslike, which is accurate to his reputation. Rothstein was one of the most influential crime figures of his era and a mentor to younger gangsters like Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky. Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky were very real and pivotal in shaping organized crime. The show accurately portrays them as young, ambitious, and forward-thinking, moving away from old-school ethnic rivalries to build a national crime syndicate. They did attend the Atlantic City Conference in 1929, and their partnership was one of the most important in mafia history. Al Capone was very real, and his rise from low-level enforcer to Chicago's crime boss is well documented. The show follows his path closely, dramatizing his early days under Johnny Torrio and his gradual climb to power. His interactions with Nucky are exaggerated, but the essence of Capone's ambition and brutality is authentic. Stephen Graham's performance as Al Capone in the series is widely praised for its authentic depiction of the infamous gangster. Many viewers and critics consider Graham's performance a standout in the series, and we here at Health Wealth Diary do as well. By the way, which actor/actress do you guys think stood out the most on the show? Let us know in the comments below. For over 2 decades, Nucky Johnson was untouchable, but every empire has its fall. For Nucky, it wasn't betrayal or a bloody gunfight, it was taxes. In 1941, he was indicted for tax evasion, convicted, and sentenced to 10 years in prison. He served about 4 years before being released, but his empire was gone. He had lost his wealth, his power, and his city. The man who once ruled Atlantic City from a Ritz-Carlton suite spent his later years quietly, working as a salesman for an oil company. Enoch Nucky Johnson died on December 9, 1968, at the age of 85 in Northfield, New Jersey. On the show, Nucky Thompson meets a brutal end. He's gunned down on the boardwalk by Tommy Darmody, the son of his former protege, Jimmy. It's poetic, tragic, and cinematic. But in reality, Nucky Johnson lived a very different ending. He died, not by bullets, but by natural causes. The man who once ruled Atlantic City simply slipped away long after his power had vanished. Atlantic City, after Nucky Johnson, spiraled into decline. The tourism industry collapsed, poverty and crime rose, and by the 1970s, the city was crumbling. In 1976, casinos were legalized in a desperate attempt to revive it. Atlantic City glittered again, but it never recaptured the glamour of the Nucky Johnson era. Nucky Johnson's story isn't just about politics or crime, it's about power, image, and survival. He wasn't a gangster in the mold of Al Capone. He was something else, a political boss who turned corruption into an empire. His personal life revealed a man marked by tragedy, indulgence, and the need for companionship. Boardwalk Empire gave us a violent Shakespearean anti-hero, But the real Nucky Johnson proved you don't need a gun to rule a city. You just need control. Thanks for watching. Who's your favorite character from Boardwalk Empire? Drop your answers in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications for more new videos from the Health Wealth Diary.